welcome. Thank you for coming to the town hall on AI for research and research in AI. I'm Mari Ostendorf. I'm one of the co-chairs of the AI Research Working Group, Task Force Working Group on Research, and I'm a professor in electrical and computer engineering and also the vice provost for research. And I'll turn over to my co-chair, Luke.
Hi, thanks. I'm Luke Sotomayor, a faculty member in the Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. And Mari's really done a great job of driving all this, but you'll hear mostly from her, and then also many of the committee members are going to lead the breakout sessions we'll get into later.
Okay. So I will go ahead and get us started. So I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land and the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Squamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. So the plan for today is, first of all, I want to lay out the goals. What we thought we would do is just briefly summarize the findings of the research working group and then spend most of the time soliciting your input by having a bunch of breakout groups on topics that have been identified by the working group, and then you'll come back and report out. So the format is just a short intro, a little bit of Q&A after that, and then we'll break out into 8 different groups. I'll show you the topics when we get there, and then we do the report outs. So this is a request. Please engage. You may have, if you expected a panel discussion, hopefully this will be more fun. Your input is going to inform the strategy for supporting AI-related research across the university. So we really are looking for your input. And now I'm going to put my vice provost hat on and just really say that this is about AI strategy aligning with UW values. And I'm going to talk about from the perspective of research. Research is foundational to the mission of UW. And it contributes to the, it's foundational and does 3 things. It contributes to knowledge and new technology, health of people and the planet. It also underpins excellence in education. And it fosters the skills that will serve our students in a rapidly changing world. And AI comes in all 3 of these aspects. I'm particularly interested in getting input, and I'm sort of driving this discussion in part because I need to know as vice provost how best to support AI research. And I believe that it's important for our research to be driven by not just in AI, but in general, to be driven by a focus on people and impact. When in the Office of Research, we have an attitude of wanting to support the UW culture of research-driven initiatives, particularly in thinking about AI, but even in general. We're interested in lowering barriers to entry and facilitating collaborations. And again, we're interested in promoting research that considers impacts on people and the planet. So just as some background, the work of the research group, which I have a little asterisk here, it was really time limited. So we did what we could in a small amount of time. First thing we did was come up with a survey, and I'll be talking to you about the results of that. We tried to identify strategic areas of research opportunity. There's a lot. There's some obvious ones. A couple of those are going to be topics here today. But there's really a lot, and we understand that this is going to be a changing landscape. And so we believe UW has to be nimble and allow for evolving areas of emphasis. We also spent a bit of time trying to highlight that there were a lot of connections between the task force working groups In particular, strong connection between research and education, because research supports cutting edge education, and we need upskilling to bring new people into the field. Clearly, there's a strong connection between research and the infrastructure. There's an infrastructure working group that supports the work of research. It'd be nice if it's also together jointly supporting the work of research and education. And lastly, there's lots of ways student research and student projects can benefit other aspects of UW, in particular, including student services. It's also important to keep in mind that we're not starting from scratch here. UW is already leading in AI and work is ongoing. We have many AI institutes, many led by UW, but also many more where UW is an important partner. And these are in different fields, from science to education to core AI, responsible AI, basic machine learning, foundational machine learning. So we're already doing a lot. eScience has for a couple of years been working on AI at UW, the sponsoring symposium. A year ago, they sponsored, with the help of the Allen School and the Office of Research, some seed projects in AI and the environment with exciting initial results. And they've also started initial efforts for building an AI minor, building on what's been done in data science. And they have a new AI accelerator, Data Science and AI Accelerator, which is a re-envisioning of the Data Science Accelerator. So there's a lot going on. Oh, and lastly, HIAC has been an important infrastructure source for the AI work. So there is a lot going on already. So let me just go through the survey. This was a survey done in the end of April, beginning of May. There were 2 surveys. We had over 200 responses. One survey was faculty and research staff, the other students and postdocs. There were some students who responded to we didn't actually restrict the faculty survey, so we had a few students respond, but there was 206 non-students. Most were faculty, a lot of research scientists, all 3 campuses. A lot came from the School of Medicine and School of Public Health. There's a lot of interest there. Engineering, even excluding the Allen School, there was a lot of engineering, and obviously there was a lot from the Allen School. Students and postdocs, we had 99 respondents. Not quite as many schools, colleges, campuses recommended, but still a lot, and the largest by far, again, from School of Medicine. So one interesting thing is looking at the faculty. What do they do now, and what do they think they're going to do in 2 years? If you look at the not at all and starting to explore, the people in that category, fewer people are going to be there in the next couple of years. More people, all the using AI is going to increase over the next few years in every aspect of how we as a committee thought people might be using it, from a productivity tool to advancing algorithms to new hardware and to policy and societal impacts and human AI teaming. So a lot of different uses, all increasing. Also interesting to compare faculty, staff versus trainees. The trainees are ahead of the faculty in using AI as productivity tools. And we hear a lot, the students are ahead of us. Well, they are, but they're ahead of us in productivity tools. In things to deal with research, the faculty and staff are all ahead. So it's a mixed story. We looked at, we're trying to understand how are people going to be using, how do they want to use things in the future, and what will be the resource needs. And only like 27 to 30, less than 30% wanted to use commercially licensed AI tools, and a lot of people wanted to use open source. So more than 70 to 80% wanted to use open source. So there's a big interest there. In terms of, interestingly, although only less than 30% wanted to use software licenses in research, 40 to 50% want subsidies for software licenses. But the important takeaway here is there's no clear standout. There's if you look across the spectrum of constituents at UW, there's interest in all the things, all the infrastructure you could imagine, from hardware to people, consulting staff, and consulting staff is one of the biggest. We also asked about the barriers to AI and ML work. The biggest one, not surprisingly, is the learning curve. If you put the two data things together, that's also a big barrier. So just to summarize, we expect the use of AI to increase over the next couple of years. Trainees are ahead of faculty in using AI as a productivity tool, but not in research-related activities. There seems to be some inconsistency on software licenses, but I don't actually see that as really an inconsistency. I think that more people want to use open source for research. I think the LLM licenses or the generative AI licenses are probably more important to people for productivity tools. There's a need for balance in if the university makes investments, it should be in a balanced way. And the learning curve is the greatest barrier to entry than data. An interesting thing, I didn't call it out earlier, faculty seem to be less challenged than students by cross-disciplinary work, but more challenged by the learning curve. An important caveat, this was a small sample done in a short period of time, and we know the landscape is rapidly evolving. And with that, I will stop and we'll take a few questions, but I really want to get to the breakout sessions.
Okay, sounds great. And I don't know if we didn't get any questions. People just don't know about the Q&A function, which is something you can see down at the bottom. Kind of next to where you do chat and participants and all those other things on your bar. And you can throw them in even now if you want. But what the goal here is to do our breakouts next. Thanks, Mari, for the really great introduction and overview. And in the context of all this information we've learned from the survey and so forth, the committee sort of identified some topics to focus on in the breakouts, and folks volunteered to lead those breakouts. Thank you so much. And we ended up with this list here. So we'll have a breakout on health AI research led by Ankur, how students facilitate collaboration between researchers in AI and researchers in application domains led by Ina, AI research and policy, where Ryan will lead. What guidelines might help ensure that UW investments in AI put people first, are ethical, responsible, and equitable, led by Anne. Advancing the AI ecosystem with open source infrastructure and partnerships with Shishi. Earth and atmospheric sciences and scientific discovery by Maureen. Physics and domain knowledge and AI by Steve. And then collaborating with community members for human-centered work by Julie. And so, throw any questions in if you have now about any of these. You're unclear what they really mean, but I think the folks did a good job with the labels, and so hopefully it's clear. And then in a second, we'll turn over to the text folks, which will tell you you can choose to opt into one of these, and you'll do that again with your breakout rooms at the bottom. And we're excited to see how the discussions go. And then either the lead or someone else that they nominate will take notes, and there'll be a report back afterwards, a few minutes from each session after we're done with the breakouts.
Okay. I think we should have the report outs go in reverse order from the way they were listed, because those were the smaller groups, and the smaller groups are going to have an easier time reporting out. So let's start with Julie Keynes, your group, collaborating with community members for human-centered AI.
Thanks. I was hoping I had more time, but I will go first. It's all good. So, yeah, we had a relatively small group, and we actually debated should we join one of the other groups, but we decided to keep it as our group. So we were focused on thinking around community engaged research and how we can engage with those methods to think about human-centered AI design. And so we had some questions around what are some successful models around community engaged work that we can use in AI research. So we talked about things like co-design, community advisory boards, and thinking about prototyping and developing things that can be working with community partners and establishing what their needs are. We thought about resources that might be needed. So often with community partners, when you're working with them in research, they want something that they can actually use and take back to their everyday lives and not just sort of sitting and being published in research papers. And so often there's that research practice gap of the things that we need for research are sort of not things that are immediately usable by community partners. And so some resources might be helpful to have some development staff that we can have people, work to make a product or thing that is working with our community partners that we're designing with. I think there's a gap in people's knowledge about and understanding willingness to use AI, which I think other groups have probably been talking about as well too. So those of us who have been doing some work in the space have talked about how many people are hesitant to work with or try AI for all sorts of wonderful and important reasons. But oftentimes it does sort of just take experimenting and trying it out to sort of understand what AI is capable with. And so is there a way to help address some of the knowledge gaps that we can do with our community partners? I think we also talked about there's a lot of really great, if there's any differences between human-centered AI research and other existing great community engaged work happening at UW, and if there's differences between AI-based research and community engaged research. And so, we think that there's a lot of great work in the community engaged work we can already piggyback on in terms of developing relationships, working to lower bars around sort of paying and compensating community partners for their time, navigating issues with IRB and other sorts of things with community partners that we can piggyback on. But we feel like in this thing, we might need some more technical expertise to support engagements with those community partners. We also talked about some of the caveats or concerns. So there's been some work and thinking around using AI as a replacement for engaging with people. Oh, you can just interview the AI instead of talking to people about that. So we want to make sure that people are not using AI as a tool to replace community engagement and focus on the importance of that. And then lastly, just the role of communicating about this work to the broader population, since there's privacy concerns and trust concerns, and how do we learn about these and be able to kind of make sure we're doing that in our community engaged work.
Great, thanks. And just a reminder to all of the groups, if you can keep it to 4 minutes, then we'll finish on time. Steve Brunton, how to incorporate physics and domain knowledge into AI.
Yeah, thank you. We also had a relatively small group, so we had a few threads. And actually, they were a little bit diverse. So in no particular order, one of them is if we're going to start using AI, let's say things like LLMs, chat, GPT, to collaborate with us in research in the physical sciences, how do we know when we're getting bogus answers? If you ask, a question about the state of the art in astronomy, how do you know that you're not getting something that's just false? Or, how do you winnow through that data? And I think a lot of it boils down to, we as advisors already have that skill of taking that data from students where we don't have the time to verify every detail, but we know when red flags go up. So using that advising skill when we interact with, these kind of digital knowledge generators and curators. And then that follows on to a follow-on point, which is super important, is we as advisors actually already have that skill set. How do we train our students, our grad students, our master's students, our undergrads, so that they also have those critical skills where they can call BS on bad information? And so that really opens up this question that's different training for first and second year undergraduates than it is for seniors and juniors or master's students or PhD students. Like, they need to know the fundamentals so that they can, have those red flags raised in sciences. Another thread is, more broadly in, let's say, arts and sciences, there are fields of science where the rules the prior physical knowledge is less well known, it's less clean than F equals ma or E equals mc squared. So think about like social sciences, things like that. How do we start using these tools to actually learn new physics from complex data sets? So that can actually be a really amazing tool for us as researchers to like, can I learn a differential equation that's slightly more complicated than F equals ma, but it teaches me how traffic flows work or how diseases spread, things like that. Then there is this other aspect from kind of a different definition of what knowledge is. What if you just have a bunch of technical documents or emails or service requests or help manuals in some field? So it's not physics per se, but it's a set of formal rules. How do you actually kind of build a custom LLM from that? How do you curate the data? Do we understand the costs of curating this data? When is this going to become a commodity? And then the last point is, questions about how these trends are going to happen with the university. Is this going to be organic department to department, or is this going to be top down? Is there going to be support? Questions like that.
Okay. Maureen Denault, the AI for Earth Environmental Sciences to advance scientific discovery and actionable science.
Yeah, that was a lengthy title for a much for a slightly different conversation. We actually, I think we had about 3 threads of discussion. The first one is how we leverage how advanced our students are and how they allow that glue between our domain expertise and the AI experts, because they're catching the tools, but also interested. And for that, we had a lengthy discussion about how to teach applied ML, applied AI into our domain and how that attracted our students more. And so we discussed maybe the mechanisms to creating unit-specific or college-specific classes that will have the fundamental concepts, but the relevance to the the units or the college more broadly. We did talk about how fundamental knowledge in AI was important, but then our students really wanted to be able to apply this. There was a lot about discussion. I think casting problems in such a diverse field. We talked about like the orders of magnitudes of scales and modalities that earth science and environmentals deal with. So often it was a barrier in vocabulary and casting the problems and finding the right partner. So it seems like improving communications among the UW faculty and researchers, maybe in the form of, for the CS4M or computing for the environment, seek grants, lunches, Slack channels that will be open, and maybe events for like this kind of matchmaking of potential partners would be good. But it does take a lot of effort to go cross-disciplinary into stats and CS, so that's something that would be great. We didn't have quite some time to talk about the pure research, but I started a thread about what's the difference between big data, big simulation, computing, and stats, and it felt like again the matchmaking would really help us bridge the gaps between the purely physics drawn scientists and the purely data scientists, and trying to think about how to be more holistic in our research. In terms of technical stuff to support that, I think I was taking some note. We really need more data engineers, software engineers for the classroom and for open source software, because that's much harder than buying a nice licensed software, and AI assistant for teaching. That's something that I care about. But that was about our conversation, I feel.
Great, thanks. Advancing UW's AI ecosystem, leveraging open source models, infrastructure, and partnerships in the NAIR era.
Hi, yeah, this is Shijie. We have 5 panelists across UW campus and departments, NAIR awardees, and leaders in open source models, source code development, and also infrastructure from the University of Washington during this panel discussion. We have 26 attendants. And we start with 5 panels to introduce their work about how to advance AI ecosystem in UW. And we come with 3 major points that we have to foster interdisciplinary collaboration across departments and schools. And we have to serve as a focal point for AI-related research projects and initiatives. And there are several of the projects being playing this role, including led by eScience Institute, UWIT, and several AI Center and AI Institute at UW. And we have to facilitate partnership with industry leaders and government agencies that we have a commotion and also the HIAC have trying to play several function over here. But then we talk about how we can further advance this AI ecosystem to enable research to accelerate discovery. And we have a couple key points I want to highlight here. And we should continue to establish UW leadership in open source and interdisciplinary research. And that will require several efforts. And then also we need to be promoted in the all different level of the, and also different position in different career stages. And we also have a key point that we want to leverage diverse talent. And we have the project from UW Tacoma, and this is the area that we can train more capable experts to join this AI ecosystem. And in the end, we have to talk about how to do the research allocation enhancement, and there is an opportunity, but it's more than just hardware, but we should also try to really leverage how to use that to provide appropriate training to lower the barriers to entry to use this accelerator in order to achieve our best use and then come up with the best research result.
Okay, thank you. Ann Bostrom, what guidelines might help ensure the UW investments in AI put people first and are ethical, responsible, and equitable?
We had an excellent discussion, and Emily Bender agreed to report out for our group.
Yes, thank you. Let's see if I can still remember it. The first point was that any guidelines to be effective need to define terms. The term AI is actually ill-defined. AlphaFold and ChatGPT are not the same thing, so we need to know what we're talking about. Equity came up as an important point, and that in turn includes both things like if we're talking about large language models, the available ones are very English-centric, and that can have equity implications, but also the fact that community members at UW might not want to be involved in AI, and they need to not end up being sort of second-class community members because of that. Consent was a big issue. So this, again, connects to, can we have this be an opt-in system rather than opt-out around anything AI that's being deployed across campus? But also questions about the use of intellectual property. So when data is collected to train systems, do we have permission to use that data in that way? And also there was some comments about how we might actually put research into that, like not just come up with better guidelines, but also support research on campus into how to navigate the IP issues. We had some conversation about environmental impact and the desire to have that showing up in the guidelines. And then finally, and I'm going very fast here, maybe you can add something, Ann, but as we think about the task forces, anyone designing guidelines, et cetera, there needs to be strong representation for people who are not optimistic about the benefits of this technology. That's what's in my notes.
And I would invite anybody who feels we missed something to contribute here, but Emily covered the main points. We had a lot of discussions around those. There was quite a bit of discussion around the idea of environmental impacts and how we can understand those, avoid them, take them into account in our investments and in every aspect of the way research is carried out at the University of Washington. Thank you, Emily.
And thank you both. Ryan Kalo, AI Research and Policy.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm going to invite the rest of our large-ish group to jump in if I miss anything. But so there was a lot of appetite for a better understanding of the current policy landscape, including what kinds of mandates might be coming our way through the federal government, through the state government, and even the impact of litigation, for example, around copyright and how that affect our work. There was a caution to distinguish between AI that is serving some content generation function like generative AI and making predictions about people and not to elide those two things, to think of them differently when you're actually making consequential decisions about humans, that needs to be handled especially carefully. There was a conversation about connecting the AI as a strategic concept with data more generally. In fact, maybe an intuition that this is an opportunity for the university to get its collective house in order around its data policies. There was a caution against unfunded mandates. There's a sense that there's plenty of compliance expectations already. And while guidance is always welcome, the idea of forcing units and individuals to do things without providing the resources is concerning to folks. Another concern had to do with a lack of cohesive policies hampering innovation and pedagogy and research. And there was an example given of a person who did not deploy AI in their classroom because of because of concerns about violating a policy and uncertainty. There was a thought about it would be nice to have a cohesive communication plan around AI for the whole university. And then finally, there was a very optimistic sense that the University of Washington should lead the way, not just on the development of AI, not just on the application of AI to cutting edge research, we know health, environmental science and the like, but also on policy and the socio-technical context for AI. That there was a repeated mention of the idea that the University of Washington is well positioned to foreground issues of justice, to help underrepresented voices be heard, to plug into conversations that are ongoing about policy, not just in the pure AI mode, but also with stats and algorithms and other people that were developing solutions that could plug into policy. So there was a great deal of excitement and optimism around the role of the University of Washington leading some of this sort of socio-technical, they're certainly not non-technical, but socio-technical aspects of AI as well. I invite anybody from the group to correct me or add anything. These are my notes, and I want to make sure there's an opportunity. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Evelyn, how can students facilitate collaboration between researchers in AI and researchers in application domains?
Yeah, sounds good. So we were a small discussion group, but we had a representation from PhD student, faculty, and also staff members from UW IT and UW libraries. And we had a very student-focused, amazing discussion, and we identified some concrete action space and suggestions. So from my notes, I guess we discussed some sub-questions. First one is, what kind of resources and support do students need from UW or advisors to foster collaboration between AI and application domains? And one thing that we identified was the tools. So there's a strong demand of AI tools, but there's no clear way to get students such tools. Like, for example, UWare may not yet include like AI tools like ChatGPT or any thing that people are already using, but they typically come in the paid form. So there's no clear way to support students on that front. So maybe have a clear list of what's available. And this is especially helpful for students who are not already in computer science or AI related field. And of course, we know that it's like the difficulty associated with this is that like how to decide how to charge, how to fund them, and maybe some other schools have some version of like ChatGPT for education, but it's like I don't think UW has something like that. And because we also have representation from libraries, so we figure that where maybe libraries can help is to get students to the resources where the tools are. Another thing is that we also need to find ways to connect interested students with AI-related opportunities. This may include paid student jobs on campus, internships, research, teaching opportunities, TA opportunities. And I think this is also especially important for students who are not already in AI or computer science. And libraries, again, may be able to help reach the students or connect the resources with students, or connect a job posting or like any sort of research opportunities with interested students. And we also think that having some sort of mixers or connectors between project and students who are interested could benefit a lot. Another sub-question we discussed was how can students play a role in facilitating collaborations between AI and application domains? So we talked about the need to get students to join and engage with UW AI community of practice. And for students in other fields, creating more learning opportunities because they don't come naturally for them, not like students who are like already in CS, maybe they can just talk to their friends who are working on AI, but like students from humanities or other maybe science domain may not have such opportunities. So connectors, mixers would help, and library mixers could be one of the options, maybe student-led, but then student would need resources to and resources including like maybe budget, some sort of credit to justify the effort and kind of get the support from the university. We also talked a bit about previous experience collaborating with students in other departments, what worked and what didn't work. Some of the things I already talked about in the answers to the other question. Like one thing we identified was that library space can maybe help make connections for students, and a lot of students are learning about AI online, and there may not be a lot of collaboration initiated from departments that are not like a core AI. So maybe there is a need for connection between students who are in departments that are not core AI. I think that's about it from my notes, but I invite anyone from the group to add or correct if I said anything incorrect.
Melissa, did you want to add to this?
That was a mistake. I apologize.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Okay, last but not least, health AI research. Ankur Teradesai.
Yeah, hi everyone. We had a diverse group of faculty, residents, as well as colleagues from UW Medicine join. I am actually going to make this super easy, and let me just, oh, sorry. I was trying to just post the notes in the chat so everyone can read it. I can summarize quickly. We teed off by having a list of discussion topics around opportunities for research of AI in health. We teed it up with, is that just AI or AI beyond the scribe? We talked about like concerns and mitigations for use of AI in health, and then potential partnerships and what's new that's happening within UW for health AI. We talked about infrastructure needs, tool needs, and any specialized engineering resources needs across campus as more and more of these AI workloads come to bear in the health setting. everyone contributed to the discussion. The key topics that came out were, number one, tool accessibility is very high on the radar. For example, how do we enable tools like Copilot to be available for residents, students, and researchers? What are the data and privacy security concerns of enabling such tools to be available to everyone? For example, what do we do if a resident or a physician sees a patient, uses open public domain tool to then ask a question about diagnosis, the tool delivers the diagnosis, and then the physician, inputs that diagnosis into Epic. What is the regulatory framework here and who can support that? It was noted that UW Medicine has a generative AI task force that is being led by Anna Anderson, that is looking to address some of these issues at a policy level, at a governance level, from the FDA regulatory framework level. And they are in fact also working on a secure ChatGPT deployment for providers as one of the sort of tools that can be piloted. So anyone interested in participating in such pilots or contributing to thought leadership as these pilots happen for AI in health is encouraged to contact that task force. And maybe we should share the notes between that task force and the AI in research task force. There was a discussion around ethical and secure tool use. One interesting use case that was brought up was, should we use AI as a critic for reviewing publications? And obviously, the sentiment is you don't want to do that. But the reason to not do that is not because you don't want AI to write the critic, but rather you don't want to do that because you don't want to leak the information inside the publication to the AI, because then it can learn from that, which is something not yet published or validated, and then it can become hugely biased, next time around, right? So that was quite interesting for all of us to understand. Last but not the least, biomedical informatics, and Neil talked about how biomedical informatics has fellows, been doing AI for 50 years, and they are starting a new institute for medical data science that everyone is encouraged to reach out and participate in the colloquium. So there was some general PSAs that were shared by the group across different UW initiatives that are happening, and I'm happy to share that. Thank you.
Thank you to all the groups. You did a great job and you made our deadline. You made our time constraints in terms of report outs. And I really thank you to everyone for participating in these groups. I got to see some, Luke got to see others, and I think it was really robust discussions. And I hope the group leaders can send us both your notes. I madly took notes, but you guys have more. And I think it's really informative. I also want to just put a plug in for those smaller groups. There were a lot of, I think there were some connections across different themes. I think I just wanted to highlight, for example, I know there was themes between the People First group and the collaborating with community members, but I think there's also the connections between that and the AI research and policy, because you need to talk to the community to understand the impacts, and there is connections across all of these. Obviously, there's then connections to health AI, and so we're not treating these questions as silos. We think all of the input is useful. We would have had more questions if we could, but this has been really good, helpful. Thank you all for participating. Any last words, Luke?
No, just second, thank you, and lots of great ideas. So look forward to what we can do with this in the future.
Oh, and we're supposed to remind you about the, you can go to where do we go for the other town halls, additional town halls?
The Provost blog will continue to be updated with those, and there's a link in the chat for that.
Thank you. Sorry,
Thank-
Pete.
Thank you.
Any last announcements? Okay. Thank you all so much for coming.